Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here. Well, a lot of strange events are happening across the globe, from Yellowstone to talk of a pole shift to increased volcanic and earthquake activity along the Ring of Fire. Well, what the heck is going on? Is there some kind of link or tie to all this activity? Well, you might be surprised. What I have for you in this report is absolutely massive. At the end of it, I'm going to conclude it with a FEMA report proving that they are preparing for a CME or an EMP of some sort. Whether or not that will actually happen is anyone's guess, but either way, preparations are underway. Well, for starters, let me tell you what's going on at Yellowstone. About a month or so, or a couple months ago, there was increased activity at Yellowstone, specifically an increased amount of earthquakes in the area there. Now we have pressure building in the magma chamber. Check out this report from zerohedge.com, and it's titled, "New data shows Yellowstone supervolcano strained. Magma chamber is under immense pressure." Now, this report goes on to state that according to a group of seismologists who are monitoring the potentially catastrophic supervolcano, Yellowstone is under strain. This new report has reignited fears that the caldera could erupt at any moment. It goes on, experts were also alerted to the volcano strain after noticing deformation, the process which surface rocks subtly change shapes, and it is occurring beneath the surface of Yellowstone right now. Researchers state deformation only occurs when there is change in the amount of pressure in the magma chamber, and experts are keeping an eye on this development. It further details that seismologists from UNAVCO, a nonprofit university-governed consortium, are using GPS, borehole tilt meters, and borehole strain meters for measuring minute-to-minute changes of deformation at Yellowstone. In an article for the Billing Gazette, David and Glenn say that the strain signal is larger than would be expected if the crust under Yellowstone were completely solid. Interesting. Here's the thing about Yellowstone. I've done multiple reports on what's going on. We know that many scientists have came out saying Yellowstone is long overdue. Why is it that everything seems to be long overdue? Yellowstone is overdue. Pole flip is overdue. All these things are long overdue. But why isn't any of it happening? Well, I think that's a good question. And the answer, well, somebody's got their hand on Earth, if you know what I mean, at least for now. But either way, you have conflicting reports on both ends of the aisle, but as it sits, scientists are once again warning the world about Yellowstone. Either way, I say, let's be ready for anything. Well, with that, that's not the only thing that scientists are saying we should worry about. Check out this report from express.co.uk, and this was put out February 2018. And it says, Ring of Fire, big one, question mark. Scientists warn tremor clusters make major earthquake more likely. Now, this report goes on to detail that increased seismic activity across the Pacific Ring of Fire has led to fears a massive tsunami-coming earthquake could be due after a scientific study this week conflicted with previous research. The Ring of Fire is a chain of volcanoes on a huge arc of fault lines running along the coastlines of the Pacific Ocean through North and South America, Japan, Southeast Asia, and even New Zealand. Now, we know, and I've been following the Ring of Fire, there's always activity on the Ring of Fire, but they are believing that there is, and they are stating that there is an uptick in that activity. Well, there's actually an answer why we're seeing an uptick in that, and I'll get in that in a moment. Could be why we see more pressure under Yellowstone as well. But before I move on into that area, I also want to talk about this, a pole shift. For starters, what is a pole shift? If you don't know what that is, let me give you the short basic term. It's when the North and South Pole switch places, if you will. Now, this is something that does happen, and it happens every 200,000 to 300,000 years. So likely not in our lifetime. However, according to scientists, yet again, it happens every 780,000 some odd, or it's been, 780,000 years since such an event has taken place. So ergo, we are obviously long overdue. Now check out this report from undark.org titled, "The Magnetic Field is Shifting. The Poles May Flip. this could get bad. Now, that report goes on to detail that a pole flip is possible, including all the information that I spoke of earlier, but it also details the fact that the Earth's magnetic field has weakened and has been weakening for quite some time. And that is really the cause for concern because more radiation can get in. So they're worried about power lines being out or power lines going out as a result of this radiation being increased. That is one of the main things that scientists who agree that a pole shift would cause disaster, and some are on the opposite end of that, saying it won't cause disaster because it's a slow moving process of 1,000 to, I believe, I got to quote this right, 10,000 years long that it takes it to do its thing, if you will. So you have people on both sides of that. I'll kind of let you decide where you sit in that thing. But either way, we also have that going on at the same time as we have increased Yellowstone activity and increased Ring of Fire activity. Well, what's the link to it all? Well, the solar minimum. Now, solar minimum is on an 11-year cycle, and they believe we're heading into that here soon. Check out this report real quick on nasascience.gov. This one's titled Solar Minimum is Coming. Here's another one, shftplan.com. Scientists fear grid failures during a solar minimum. Now, during this time, sunspots on the sun are less frequent and weather seems to be more increased. During a solar minimum, which is on this 11-year cycle, you have increased tsunamis, increased earthquake, which could account for what's happening on the Ring of Fire, maybe even Yellowstone. But all this activity increases because the sunspots on the sun are less frequent. And the other thing that happens is the coronal holes on the sun will last a little bit longer than normal. So these are things that happen during a solar minimum. Again, what happens during this time is sunspots on the sun are less frequent and coronal holes last a little bit longer, thus causing more extreme weather, more extreme volcanic activities, more hurricanes, and that kind of nature. Also, during this particular solar minimum, the world is predicted to get a little cooler, according to some reports. Some say as much as 7% cooler, claiming that the reason for this is because the outermost layer of the atmosphere is losing some of that atmospheric nature due to the radiation, the increased activity we have on the earth there. So such cycles can also wipe out some of the power grid because we're losing some of that atmospheric layer. So interesting. So as it sits, all this increased activity could be accounted for some of the things that are with the solar minimum or with the pole reversal, if you will, which some scientists claim can take a long amount of time. Now, all that in a nutshell, should we be worried about any of it? Well, the way that I see it is, yeah, you should always have a heads up about some of those things, especially Yellowstone, which is long overdue, and some of the other things as well. That's why I'm a huge avid preparer and prepare for such events. You guys know that I use My Patriot Supply and I have all of that, but I am a huge preparer and I encourage you to do so as well. But additionally, I'm not a scientist and I can't predict the future, and scientists always tend to disagree, so they never know which is up or down. But either way, we need to be ready for such events, because even the US government, who you could never rely on in the event of a catastrophe, is prepared for such events. Check out this unpublished FEMA report, and I'm going to toss that up on the screen. But this is something that the US government through FEMA have put together to prepare for a major CME, a coronal mass ejection, or an EMP attack on our power grid. Now, this report, I've read it and done a whole entire study on it, but basically they have about 1 year out of what they can do and what they can supply to people. But outside of that year, keep in mind, it can take 4 to 10 years to fix the power grid, meaning you're on your own for 4 to 10 years because the government doesn't go beyond a year, because there's not really a plan in place that they can do or fix it, depending on what kind of things happen, if they happen on the power grid. All that in a nutshell to say they are preparing, you need to prepare, but nobody really knows what the future holds, so I can't say either way. We can look at some of the pathetic sides of it and see what's going on there, but in a nutshell, we can listen to what scientists say on both sides of the fence and just kind of form our own opinion. But either way, this is a heads up. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.